John, good to see you, man.
Yeah, you too, man. How are you?
Pretty good. First time we met.
Yeah,
I think so, right?
think so.
Sometimes I'll be a total douche and I'm like, first time we met. People are like, no, we met for 6 seconds backstage. And I'm like, my bad, I didn't remember.
Yeah.
But I think it's the first time we met.
I think it is, man.
You drove a trailer up to the house.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Don't be sorry. We always have trailers at the house. They were like, "Do you see the trailer?" I thought it was like our yard guy. I don't mow anymore. I left that behind.
I mean,
after my maintenance days on the golf course, I left that behind. Is that what you were doing?
I got my equipment if you need me to hit it.
No,
real quick.
I'm good. We did it yesterday. I was going to ask you though. Our pool is so green.
Yeah,
I know nothing about pools. Do you know anything about pools?
I'm learning.
Apparently there's some algae, and they had to come shock the pool today.
Yeah, dude.
I don't know about the rich person stuff. I'm still like new to the rich person stuff.
Yeah.
And so the pool is like really green though.
It is a little green. Algicide, I think is what it's called. You put a little of that in there and shock the piss out of it.
Yeah, that's what they did. They said they shocked it. So would you throw like a hairdryer in it? Like that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Like a plugged up hairdryer?
Yeah.
Why are you what were you doing today?
Why? Well, so we used to live in East Nashville, and we ended up moving out to Jolton last year, a year and a half ago. And
land purposes?
Just wanted a little bit more room. And so when we did that, we were thankfully able to keep our other house and rent it out. So I'm landlording, taking care of my due diligence, cutting the grass per monthly. I won't say I do it every 2 weeks because it's not every 2 weeks, but whenever I'm home, I try to hit it.
Is that because you enjoy doing it?
No, it's just because I'm cheap.
Okay, one of the two.
Yeah, one of the two.
Yeah.
Right?
And so you drove over, and do the people that are renting it, are they renting it now? Somebody renting it?
Yeah.
Do they know that their landlord is a successful songwriter and now artist?
Yeah. They're like, that's cool. Can you come cut our grass? Our grass is up to our waist, if you don't mind.
That's funny. So do you have a riding mower or do you have a push mower?
A riding mower, yeah.
I worked maintenance on a golf course for a long time.
Did you?
Yeah, and like the rich kids, it got to be the cart kids at the club.
Yeah.
The poor kids, it was definitely a class system. The poor kids, we had to be the maintenance workers we had to weed eat ditches, mow greens in the morning when the sun came up.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't even get the riding mowers. It was all push mowers.
Right.
It was the worst. So I thought to myself, as soon as I have money, I'm never freaking touching a lawnmower again.
Yeah.
I'm out. Yeah. And as soon as I got money, I never touched a lawnmower again.
Good for you, man.
I have a traumatic relationship with waking up early, which I still do. That part sucks.
Yeah.
But then having to mow. Once I woke up early, driving to the golf course, woke up in somebody's yard. Wasn't drunk, fell asleep.
Really?
Fell asleep. Luckily, didn't crash into their house.
No alcohol involved?
None. I've never had a drink of alcohol, so it wasn't like I was drunk for any reason.
Yeah.
That was my bad memory. Yeah, what were your jobs before you got into this career, or did you have jobs while you were in this career initially?
Yeah, I mean both. My first couple jobs I had growing up was cutting grass. I would have a couple of yards on the side after I would, get done. I worked at a tire shop during the day, and then after I got off, I would go cut yards, and I had a handful, enough to like make good money, after hours. So,
was there music in your family? As far as the creation, like writing or playing?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of fell into it early. Like my mom, she's kind of the musical one. She was the one that taught me how to sing, play piano, hear harmonies, like stuff like that. She had a great ear for that. And my dad could not sing, but he could tell you, every band in the 70s, every album when it was released, like he was that guy. So I was pretty fortunate to have kind of both ends of that and in my upbringing, and then you throw bluegrass in the mix, which is, pretty predominant where I'm from. It's just, something that it's more of a pastime than anything. It's not necessarily something people get into as a career, but you just, bluegrass is just something you can sit around on the front porch and play, with whoever. And so kind of fell into that. But that's what made me fall in love with guitar. Guitar was kind of my first love. And then, learned how to sing a little bit. And then, after high school, I started, getting into the songwriting world. I had no idea it was a thing until, 17 or 18. I started studying up, seeing the same names on different songs that I liked from different artists, right? And you kind of keep up with that more. And that whole world just opened up to me, and I fell in love with, creating an idea, writing songs. And so that's ultimately what brought me here. That's what I wanted to do.
When you talk about your mom teaching you those things you mentioned, was she trained in any way? Did she perform ever in her life? Or was she just drawn to it and learned it out of a hobby?
More so that. I mean, she grew up singing and playing in church, and I think she took lessons, but she wasn't somebody who could sit down and sight read. A lot of it was by ear. So yeah, it was mainly just for fun. She just enjoyed doing it. Most of her family, like on her side, it was just a musical family. They would just, like I said, they would get together and have singings just for fun, right? So yeah, it was just kind of more of a hobby, I guess.
Were you a ball player?
Yeah.
So I'm assuming if you're a good ball player, that music really can't dominate until you're not playing ball anymore.
Yeah. Well, I said I was a ball player, not a good ball player.
Well, everybody that ends up coming here ends up being a good ball player.
Yeah.
Because usually a lot of times, honestly, it's that same kind of work ethic and drive that makes them a good ball player. It's when they commit to music. Because some people go, man, it's crazy how good ball players are always artists. And I'm like, well, actually, the guys, and there have been some girls too that are great athletes and then turn to music. What they do is they actually channel that work ethic and energy into music. It's not just that if you're a good ball player, you can do music, but it's like the traits and the discipline that you learn coming up through playing sports for the most part. Mm-hmm. So, but it's also rare that somebody's a good ball player and really into music at the exact same time. Yeah. Because there's so much energy that has to go into one or the other.
I agree. I don't know how anybody could do that professionally. I mean, for me, baseball was kind of my first love, and then when I got into high school, our baseball program shut down, so I kind of transitioned into basketball. Basketball became like my thing.
What happened with the baseball program? Small school?
Yeah, tiny. Yeah, a little private Christian school. I graduated with 6 people, so.
Oh, that's real small.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't have a baseball field, but I graduated with 40. It's like a public school. We had to play on another team's baseball field.
Wow, yeah, that's small for a public school.
Super rural town. Yeah. So, could you not go play ball at another school?
I probably could have. I don't know, man. It just, I didn't really think about it too much. I was, I knew I loved baseball, but I had a really good coach come through for our basketball program kind of around that time. And he really changed the game for me with basketball. He was big on the Princeton offense, which is like,
it's very slow, methodical ball.
It's a half-court offense. A lot of, everything has an out. You always have an option, right? You're always moving. So it was just fun for me. I was, I was more of a guard position at that time, so I was moving a lot, touching the ball a lot. So I just liked it. Baseball is obviously a little slower moving game, which I love now. But softball is definitely what I would choose if I had to pick one now. But
pickleball, though?
Yeah, I love pickleball.
Oh, you say you do? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little rusty. When we were out with the Aldean boys, they set up something. Brian O'Connell would have a court set up every show we were playing. So that was kind of our workout during that tour. But
by the way, I wasn't insulting the Princeton offense. I meant, like you said, a half-court offense. When I say slow, I don't mean
slow,
everybody needs to be slow. I mean, I'm very familiar with the Princeton offense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything is very deliberate.
Yeah.
The offense sets and goes. So everybody watching or listening to this, it's going to message me and say the Princeton offense is not slow. I hear you. Anyway, continue on. So were you drawn to basketball? Were you pretty good? I was
all right. At high school, I led my school in the most technicals. Proud of that. I definitely had a hot head back in the day. Just for sports, though. It was just like, I guess is what you're passionate about. It was like sports and music I would get really frustrated with sometimes. But sports, my adrenaline would encourage me to verbalize that, And so it was a lot of fun. But, yeah, I think had I gotten control of that early on, I might have been able to do something with it. But I knew I went to a small Christian school down in Pensacola, too, after I graduated, and I coached my high school for a couple of years, and then I was like, I want to try college. Went to college.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
You coached for a couple of years?
Yeah, I did.
And then went to college? You took 2 gap years, but those were coaching gap years?
Yeah.
Did you think you wanted to be a coach?
Yeah, I always loved that. Like I said, the coach that kind of came in at that time for me was just a cool guy. I mean, we're still buddies, and he was a younger guy, and it was just fun to watch. He was fun to work with. He was fun to was fun to pick his brain because he was so smart about, the game, and he was a player himself. He won like 3 out of 4 state championships his high school career at a big school down east, Carolina. So, it was just fun. It was really, really cool, and I appreciated that side of it and wanted to try it out. I coached the middle school girls team my first year, which was wild.
Why?
Just trying to get, middle school girls to listen to a 21-year-old, decent looking guy. It was just funny. But they were great, man. We had a great time. And
how'd you do?
Not good, not good. But we had a lot of fun. And the next year I upgraded to the JV boys, and the year after that, I was assisting the varsity then too. And then the year after that, I actually coached 3 seasons total. And my final year, I coached the varsity boys, and it was so much fun, man. It's just like you just put everything into it, right? And we didn't have a great record, but I had a young team, man. If I would have had those guys a couple more years, we would have been pretty good. But
why do you go to college then?
I was kind of lost, man. I was just kind of like, coaching was really fun to me, but it was that hometown thing where I'd been in Silva my whole life, and I was just like, man, I feel like I'm gonna get stuck here if I stay now, and so I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Music at that time, I had been burnt on the road because I've been on the road since I was 11, going to school, playing ball, all that stuff was based around me touring and doing the Bluegrass circuit. We were gone every weekend. We probably played 150 shows a year.
What were you playing? Were you playing guitar?
Yeah.
Could you play fast, like bluegrass style fast?
Used to be able to, yeah.
I mean, I guess you had to kind of get in to fit in, right? So,
yeah.
And I would assume, my experience, not with bluegrass, but with anything, being around great people, you kind of have to at least try to be great and get a lot better, or you don't get to hang out with the great people anymore.
Exactly.
Is that what it was for you at a young age?
Yeah. I knew it because it's like you said, people don't really care how you sing in bluegrass, but you better be able to play, and so I really, really dove into that and just being a lead guitar player, and I'm thankful for that because it allows me to at least hang now, with my guys and what we do. So
I was wrong then. If you're playing at 11, you were good at ball and music, because most of the time it's one or the other with a lot of folks. But if you're starting even before you really get serious about ball, which it sounds like you did, if you're starting at 11,
yeah,
which were you more passionate about?
Always music, man. Even playing bluegrass, like I was playing traditional bluegrass at that time too in the beginning, and you're playing the same songs that every other band's playing a different way, right? It's traditional, standard bluegrass tunes. And so it was a lot of fun, but I just got burnt, man. I was just like, I want to write my own stuff. I want to do my own thing. And it took me a minute to figure out that's what I wanted to do, but when I did, that's when I was like, all right, I got to move to Nashville now, or I'm going to get stuck here,
Were you around any other folks that had been to Nashville and maybe it didn't work out or it wasn't for them and they came back and could tell you that you needed to be in Nashville?
Not anybody who had been and came back, but I had, so my drummer, he's from same town as me, and he moved to Nashville about a year before I did. He was like, man, same thing. He's like, I want to get a pub deal. I'm going. So he was he was a heavy encourager of, like, every weekend he would call me, bro, you got to come down here and write. You going to move down here? When are you moving? Like, he was that guy. And so I had him, and then I had another buddy from Clayton, Georgia, right across the line from me, who I grew up with, Jeb Gibson, who he got a deal at Seagull as a writer. And before he even moved to town, he got signed. And so seeing that happen, I was like, man, that's cool. At least I know 2 people. I had like 3 friends when I moved here that I was really close to, and they were all in the music industry. So that was helpful to kind of get established early on just through their friend group and like just trying to hang and meet people. It was like, that helped me a lot, sped the process up, I feel like, a little bit. But yeah, man, it was a lot of fun. I knew that, music was always what I was passionate about, no matter what else I was doing. Like, I knew that was it. There was a time period where I didn't touch my guitar for like a year and a half, and that was when I was coaching and doing stuff like that.
Purposefully, or just didn't have time for it because you were consumed with ball?
With my middle school girls basketball.
I just said ball. All I said was ball.
Career. Probably a
Like,
little.
were you burnt by it? So you're like, I'm gonna leave it, and hopefully the passion comes back, or I'm gonna leave it because I just don't want to touch it, or were you just no time?
Probably I was really burnt, man. Like, you're on a Sprinter van for, I mean, literally I was from 11 to really 18. I was on the road in a Sprinter van, sleeping in the floor or whatever, It's just like, I think it just caught up to me, and that's kind of where I was at that point.
Did you have any money saved up? If you're playing shows at 11, did you have some money saved up?
Yeah, dude, I bought my first two vehicles with Bluegrass money.
Because it's not like there's a lot to spend it on when you're 11.
No.
There's no car insurance.
Well, there are things to spend it on, but you don't you don't need anything, right? I didn't. I was like, cool, this is nice to see money in the bank,
Yeah.
I liked that, and I've always been a tightwad too, so.
Yeah, as you mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
with mowing the yard.
Yeah.
I guess at 11, there's nothing you must spend your money on.
Yeah.
Would have been a better way for me to say that, because I'd have bought baseball cards like crazy, but I didn't need baseball cards.
Yeah.
But at 11, you don't have to pay insurance.
Right. Yeah, you don't have any of the bills that take your, the core monthly income out. You're just stocking it up.
Did you know that you didn't want to do bluegrass while you were doing bluegrass? Or while you were doing it, did you love and think it was always bluegrass until you got burnt out?
I thought bluegrass was my only option for a while. I thought, this is all I've been good at. This is all I probably can do. But, I was always listening. I never listened to bluegrass in my downtime. Like, it was, I think I heard it so much on the road that I was just like, I need to change the scene when I'm not. And when we're traveling or whatever, I got my headphones in. I'm listening to the old school 90s country, 80s hair metal, like all kinds of stuff. 70s, my dad, like I said, he really influenced me in that era of music. And so, yeah, I don't know. I was always listening to different stuff and enjoyed that.
Go back to being 18, right when you graduated high school. Who were your four favorite artists then?
18, John Mayer was a huge one. I got into the Mayer world, and he's kind of the guy that, he and Keith Urban, probably two, that really got me into the electric guitar world, because I was always acoustic. Electric guitar was like, it scared me, right? I was like, I don't know what all this is. And so they're the two guys who, with just their clean tones, like introduced me to, playing a telly and getting a good clean tone out of a Telecaster, and then Strat tones, and then just started adding pedals and like figuring them out. And I was a bedroom guy too. I would sit in my bedroom and play the records all night. That's just how I practiced. I just loved doing that. And so I would say those two guys, at 18, Ronnie Millsap's been one of my favorites forever.
Is that because your dad, your mom? Maybe
probably
your mom?
More so my mom,
Yeah.
yeah. I've always loved him and his style and what he did. But I would say those three guys. And then at that time, big Three Doors Down fan. So I kind of had a little mixture of those. But
Yeah, who wasn't? Three Doors Down does not get the credit for they have so many monster just data hits.
yeah,
Meaning number ones, even songs that still stream. But because they fit in that lane, and they were so ubiquitous, because they could be on rock radio, they're massive pop radio, they could be on alternative.
yeah,
That they really didn't have a specific area that championed them, because they were everywhere.
right.
Where if they just would have been a rock band, it'd have been like, man, talk about a great Southern rock. They'd have been held up high as a standard. But because they were so big, I feel like they don't get the credit they deserve.
Yeah.
Because they're just some Southern boys that easily could have been a country band too.
Oh yeah.
And I got a chance to know Brad, and Brad's has come out and played with my comedy group before, and we did Kryptonite, and dude, I'm telling
That's
you,
cool.
it was freaking awesome.
I bet.
Like as soon as the drums come in,
Oh yeah.
dude,
Yeah.
it's like chills.
You feel like you can play that drum solo. Anybody, because it's just so iconic, right? You're like, oh, I could do that, yeah. And then you watch it, like watch a video of it, and then you watch Brad do it. I'm like, that's what blew my mind. He's back there singing and playing. I'm like, I'm out.
And to see also his range, like
yeah.
as a singer, there are a couple artists that I've seen, and I'm curious to know like your thought on this as well. A couple artists that I've been around, and I watched them perform, and I didn't realize that they either sang so high or how they sang was so hard. Brad's one of them because you're talking about songs where he has to go, I don't even know what key he's singing in.
Yeah.
Even Kryptonite, where it's like, yeah, screaming key.
Yeah.
Like he has to scream on.
Yeah.
Tim McGraw, same way. Like he sings so high.
That's
And you just sing his songs on the radio, you're like, cool. When he sings at a show or like in my studio or something, you're like, oh, I could never.
Really?
And he hasn't changed keys at all.
See, that's cool. That's cool. I've never seen Tim live, so I didn't know that, but I can see him being. Truthfully, that's how Aldean was. I just know, I got to see his show so many times, being on the road with him. He asked me to come out and do The Truth with him on that. I think it was the first tour I was on, and I was like, oh yeah, In the Bag. That's one of my favorite songs. Whatever, dude. I went to go practice it, and I'm like, I told Jason, I was like, dude, please don't ever make me sing this bridge because I cannot hit it. There's no way I'm not getting there. You have to sing the bridge every night. So we would be up there. There was a couple times where, he would he's not a rehearsing guy, right? He's like, yeah, well, just come on, we're good, So he pulls me up there and we're in the middle of it. We get to the bridge and he looks over at me and he's like, you got it? You got it? I'm like, dude, don't do this to me, please. 30,000 people waiting on the bridge to come. But yeah, he's very deceptively high singer, just like that, yeah.
I'm not a singer. I sing for comedy. So I have a duo and, we do pretty good. But I can sing just well enough that it doesn't distract from the joke. So I'm not a vocalist in any way, but I can sing enough. And I did Meet in the Middle with Diamond Rio. You talk about a high freaking song that you're just not prepared.
Yeah.
No chance.
Isn't there a key change in that one too?
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Complete. Another one's Tracy Lawrence, Pay Me at Birmingham.
Ooh.
There's a complete key change. I can't even... Listen, again, I'm not a vocalist, but there's a complete key change in that song.
It's a cold cut right into it. Yeah, that's true. I forgot about that one.
It feels almost like the national anthem, where you got to start solo, then it gets high, and
classic mistake.
Yeah, where do you sing usually? Like what key? I'm a big G guy. I usually can just go put it in G and I can hang.
Yeah, G used to be my key too.
Then you got a lot better.
No, I don't know about. I think it got worse. B is, for whatever reason, open B is a good key for me. E is a good one. I play in drop D a lot. Those are probably my go-tos.
You moved to town and you have a bit, I'd say it's a little version of Canary in the Coal Mine. You had buddies that came and they didn't die. Yeah. And they're like, dude, you got to come. Canary lived. Come to the coal mine.
Yeah.
And so you're here. You have a little support system, at least people you know. Mm-hmm. How long until... like things, I won't even say start to happen, but you start to kind of get your bearings a little bit and go, oh, okay, I think I can do this. Because there's very much an intimidation era. Yeah. Because you're good where you're from.
Yeah.
But once you get here, I'm not speaking about you specifically, but generally.
No, it's everybody, yeah.
Yeah, once you get here, you're like, oh, I was a good ball player at my high school. But now I'm here with Yadier Molina, and it's a whole different ball game.
Oh, yeah.
How long until you finally felt comfortable and intimidation turned into kind of motivation?
Great question, man. I definitely had that era early on where I was like, I moved here with the expectation of I know what I want to do. That was my thing. I'm glad I didn't move here earlier because I probably would have bounced around, tried too many different things, probably taken too many other jobs, like not had enough money saved up to be able to focus on music when I first moved here. But yeah, I knew exactly what I wanted to do.
What was that though? You say
I just wanted to write, man. That was my thing. I wanted to be a songwriter, and I knew I fell in love with that world, and I was like, man, this is like what I wanted to do. I knew, being an artist was always in the back of my mind, but like I said, you mentioned it earlier. It was like I felt like bluegrass was the only option for that, right? I didn't know. Truthfully, I didn't know that I had a lead voice until I moved to town. And I started doing demo work because I got into production early on when I first moved here. I knew that would get me into better writing rooms. So I'm like, I can do a demo. I know how to do it enough, right? So I started, investing into equipment and like getting a little setup in my room. And, that eventually turned into me, having to sing demos and like people being like, hey, will you throw a vocal on this? Or
out of necessity, by the way.
Yeah.
Not that you're just dying to sing, but out of necessity, you kind of found your voice.
Yeah. I was always a harmony singer. I mean, I sang lead on a few songs here and there, but I was predominantly a harmony guy. And So when I started doing that, I'm also a perfectionist when it comes to music. Like I'm super anal about certain things.
Is that the bluegrass background? Because
It
it's
must be.
that is so specific. Bluegrass is so specific, and also at the same time jazz, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you can move around a bit, but if you don't move around the exact right spot, it can be disastrous.
Yeah.
It can be beautiful,
Yeah.
but it can be disastrous. And I always find that bluegrass players are what are like you are, like they're super anal about specific things when it comes to production.
Yeah.
Do you think that's where that comes from?
It could be, man. I think you're right. It's that Princeton offense mindset, right? Where you're like, I just like, I like, for one, if I'm doing a vocal, I want it to be super clean. I'm very, that's one of my pet peeves is like making sure I edit all my vocals, clean them up, get them sounding right. But, yeah, I don't know, man. I think production is what got me into better rooms as a writer, and I knew that if I could get in rooms with hit songwriters, I could figure it out. I
Did
knew
you
I
feel
could
like you
figure
could
it out.
learn from them, or
Yeah.
you could just see what they're like, what the secret is behind the closed doors,
Yeah,
and then you could do that?
because there's got to be a secret,
Right.
right? You're like, how are
Right.
these guys writing multiple hits for decades?
Like, has Ashley Gorley have 700 hits? Like, what's he doing over and over again?
Yeah, what is he doing?
Because there's something.
Yeah, there
you
has
don't-
to be.
Yeah, right.
There has to be.
What'd you learn? What was the secret?
You know what, man? I learned that these guys are just so articulate. I think the biggest thing that I learned from, especially early on, right? Early on from guys like Mike Delaney, Brett Beavers, Casey Beathard. Those were some of the guys that I got put into rooms with when I first got signed. So I was extremely nervous, new guy, but sitting in the room with them, the one thing I learned about all of them is they didn't waste any lines. There's no lines wasted. There's no fat in any of the lines. You're not saying words just to put them there and fill a space. Like every word has a purpose, right? Every line is purposeful. It's getting you to the next one, or it's getting you to the hook of the song. Like those were the kind of things that I needed, because I realized too, it made me realize my ideas that I was writing back home in North Carolina, they weren't bad ideas. I just didn't know how to get them there. I was talking about a bunch of random crap in the verses, and it made no sense when I got to the chorus. That was something that I learned from those guys, is really tying that in. Casey is the king of like writing all the way around and somehow ending back up at a hook, in the best way. So that was probably the main thing I've taken from those guys, is just cut the fat, like make sure every line is purposeful. They're also not guys who finish at 3 p.m. That was the kicker for Ashley. I'm like, dude, how in the world are you so quick? That was the thing when I wrote with him for the first time. Like, you just roll with it. You figure it out, and he moves a lot faster than my brain does. So that was cool to watch. But yeah, there's so many different things, man. I try to always be a sponge when I'm in those rooms.
I spent some time, because I'd written a bunch of comedy. I'd written a bunch of jokes, a bunch of comedy songs. But I called a friend of mine who's a songwriter, and I said, hey, I have an idea. I'd seen this thing on one of the news shows. Like in Japan, they had a hologram that was in like 7 places at once, but it was an opening act for a bunch of real artists, and they would write songs for the hologram. It was a version of what, way back in the day, what was Damon Albarn?
Gorillas.
The Gorillas. The cartoon,
yeah.
The Gorillas, yeah. And I called my friend. I said, hey, I think there's something here for us in this world. I said, let's try it. And he was like, cool. And so because I had this idea, it was me and it was Ross Copperman, it was Nicole Gallion, and they are very accomplished songwriters, lots of hits.
Yeah.
So what was chasing that idea, we had built this group called Neon People, and we were writing all these songs. Now, what I learned from being with them, because they do that every day at a high level, reinforced, I guess what I learned about other things too, was reps. The importance of freaking reps.
Yeah.
Because
true.
I'd be in, and by the way, they are extremely elevated when it comes to songwriting, but wordplay. And I would go like, how did you figure that out? And honestly, it would be like, dude, we've done this 10,000 times. Like the first 2,200, it was terrible.
Yeah.
And it was, even the greats in that world will credit to just doing it over and over again with really good people. And yeah, it wasn't that good to begin with. But now it's just the reps. and you naturally get a lot better the more you do it and the better people you do it with. And that's also what I'm hearing when you talk about these guys, because those are legends. And I've written with Jim Beavers a bunch.
Yeah.
Who's the funniest. And that's why him and I wrote together, because he was so funny.
Yeah.
But it was like, even in songwriting, which is a really cerebral thing, it's not like you just go, I'm a great songwriter. This is the second song I've ever written.
Gold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not that.
No, it's not. That's a great point, man. It's just like anything else. The more you do it, the more you're like, okay, that didn't work last time. Let's try something else, you know? And I think the other big factor, especially in Nashville, is like, who are you collaborating with, you know? Because you get two really great lyricists in a room. It could go either way. It could go really well, or you could hit a wall in the middle of the right, you know, because that was something that I don't know if I necessarily learned it, but like took on that role of like, I'm going to be the chameleon in every room. If I'm in the room with, you know, a Brett Beavers, or, you know, most of these guys they're great melodically, lyrically, like you said, they've done it so much that they're good at all ends, but they prefer some of these guys prefer to do one thing. And so I just try to fill that hole, whatever room I'm in. If we need a track going, I'll hop on. If we're getting stumped on an idea, I'll throw out some ideas. You know, whatever it is, I try to be a chameleon in the room and do that.
Did you purposefully, and I'll call that a utility player, did you purposefully have more utility because you got here and wanted to be valuable in whatever room, or did you have those skills because of all the time you had spent doing it growing up?
I'd like to think both. You know, again, bluegrass, you got to play multiple instruments. You know, you got to be able to sing different harmony parts. You got to be able to, you know, kind of adapt in the same way. I think that's what allowed me to do it, was just to have the ability of doing it, was that. But yeah, the driving force was just, I wanted to be in better rooms, and I wanted to be a songwriter. And thankfully, you know, I was 23, 24 when I officially moved here. And I moved at like the weirdest time ever in 2020. So a lot of my first big writes were over Zoom. And that was just an adjustment in all and of itself, because I'm very much a in-person kind of guy. And so I had to really become a good lyricist, because you can't sit there and play the whole time when you're on Zoom. You know, you're just pissing everybody off with the lag and all the different things. So, you know, it made me have to be a better lyricist. So I'm actually thankful for that first, you know, couple months and almost a year of writing on Zoom with some of these hit songwriters, was kind of watching them do the same thing too on the other end, and how their brain works and processing, you know, the storyline and the idea. It was a lot of fun. Eventually, at first it was extremely intimidating, but you know, I learned a lot from that year.
Any awkwardness with co-writing, because you got to say stuff now?
Yeah,
and it may not be warmly accepted, and not negatively.
Yeah,
but most things don't go into the song.
Yeah,
that's awkward.
Yeah, it is. It can be
at first.
I've definitely said some things that I wish I didn't say in front of a hit songwriter.
Early on, I'm sure.
Yeah, early on.
Because later you learn, if you say something that you shouldn't have said, maybe it turns into something else, and you have freedom with it.
Dude, you nailed it. That's exactly what I was going to say. Early on, you're like, the first stage is like you're too scared to say anything. And then when you finally get enough gall to actually say what's on your mind, you're like, oh, man, that was stupid. He didn't like it, you know? And then you get to the point eventually where you're like, yeah, here's that. And you're like, he didn't bite on it. And then, you know, like Brett did that on, so we wrote one time, Brett Beavers and I wrote one time, and we wrote Trouble with a Heartbreak, which became a #1 for both of us. Never written since. He moved to Florida. I think that was his cash out. He was like, yeah, I'm peacing out. I'll see you later. I'm like, cool. But no, we wrote one time, and I remember him specifically doing that in that room for that song, where I was like, I threw something out that I thought was kind of cool, or there might be something to it. It was a line, and he didn't say anything. He didn't acknowledge. He wasn't like, oh, yeah. He was just, he had his phone out, and he just kind of looked at me and shook his head. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to leave. I was like, that was my cue, I think. But literally 5 minutes later, he was like, hey, you know that thing you said? I was over here messing with it. And he literally made it cool. you know? So he took something that I thought was stupid and made it cool. It just sparked him in that way. So you're exactly right, man. Like you can't be afraid to say something in a room. It's not stupid till it's stupid, right?
It is a maturation process too of going from like, I'm scared to say anything. Because again, in my world, pretty big fish. But I'm riding with Ross and Nicole, and I know them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm sure everything I'm about to say is stupid. I don't want to say. So I went through like a hyper fast version of that, being like, I don't want to say anything because it's stupid. And then I'd be like, okay, this idea is totally stupid. Let me just, and I would preface it every time with how dumb what I was about to say
like,
was.
Just say it.
Yeah.
Just say it.
And then, 5 or 6 songs into it, you're just like saying the dumbest crap. And that's okay because sometimes that dumb crap would you wouldn't even use it, but it'd plant a seed sometimes that would go a direction that was similar to the dumb thing that was said.
Yeah.
And I was on like the super fast Billy Madison version of that. But and I was glad I got to do that because I can understand when songwriters talk about that now.
Yeah.
Because who was the first songwriter that you were with that kind of gave you a little a confidence that you could hang?
Mike Delaney. Yeah, he was the first guy, first big writer that I got in a room with. And he's just a laid back guy in general. So his personality is just pretty welcoming right off the bat. He's not somebody that really have to warm up to. I mean, in some ways, his humor you have to warm up to, but like him as a guy, just nicest guy in the world. And so early on, he was definitely that guy for me that I guess saw something in what I was doing and was like, I like this. We can write for these guys, but let's write for you. Let's what ideas do you have? That was when I felt like, okay, I can hang, when I was throwing out my ideas that I came up with at my house, and bringing them into the room, and guys like him were confirming that it was a good idea. That's when I was like, that's cool, man. That encouraged me to, to keep rolling, because I'm like, if he likes it, then there's got to be something to it, right? So he was the first guy. Like I said, Brett was another guy, that really encouraged me in a lot of ways. Who else, man? There's a handful of guys. Brent Anderson, my producer, he was a guy early on too, who really encouraged me in that way. Lydia Vaughn's a younger writer that I met. She was signed at Corman for maybe a year when we met, and I was unsigned, had nothing going on, and she took a chance on writing with me, and we've written, multiple times a month ever since then, and become really close friends too. So, yeah, she's one of the best in town, in my opinion. Just all the way around, she's as good of a lyricist as she is a melody person. She can play. It's like triple threat. But those are some of the early ones for me.
How soon did you and Jason start to know each other? My assumption is you wrote a bunch of songs. They ended up cutting, and your name just showed up over and over again. Like, that would be the version in my head that plays, because you have a lot of Aldean cuts.
Yeah.
And then he's like, well, this guy, John, he keeps showing up. Maybe I should meet him. That's my fictional world of what happened. What really did happen?
That would make more sense.
Oh.
No, so when I first moved to town, I obviously I'd never lived in a city. I didn't know anything about Nashville, really, just other than the music scene. So when I moved here, I was crashing on my my drummer's couch, and he was like, "Man, I'd love to show you around town." We went out to eat one night, called an Uber. Guy picks us up. We start chatting. Really cool guy. He's telling us about his story. I've been in Nashville for 20 years. Written some songs for some guys back in the day. So we kind of take it with a grain of salt, right? Like everybody in Nashville's got a story, and they're probably connected in the music industry in some way. So I didn't really think anything of it, to be honest with you. It was a nice guy. We met. He dropped us off. Peace out. See you never, kind of thing, right? So we did our thing. Well, fast forward a year from that, I had been living in town, writing songs. I was kind of had like a handshake deal with River House. Zeb over at River House took interest in what I was doing on the production side of things, and he's like, I'll plug you in with some of my writers if you'll do the demo. And I ended up getting a part-time gig over at Lucky Brand at Opry Mills. I was working there, and
in the mall.
Yeah. So I was working one day, and typically I was stocking shelves, but they were shorthanded. They pulled me out on the floor. So I'm like trying to find what lady I wanted to try to sell jeans to. You know, it was my icebreaker back then. Didn't work too well. But no, I'm working. This guy walks in. I'm like, man, I know this guy from somewhere. So I started chatting with him and realized that he was my Uber driver from a year earlier. And he just randomly came into the store, was looking for jeans. And so we hit it off. I was like, dude, this is crazy, you know? So he was like, what are you doing right now? And I'm like, I've got, you know, a handful of demos of songs I think are all right. And so I sent him a handful of those, and he went on his way. And a couple days later, he called me and was like, hey, man, like, I've been listening to some of the stuff you sent me. He's like, I feel like there's something here. There was one specific idea. He was like, I really think there's something to this. So he's like, do you mind if we revisit it? I'm like, sure. So we hop on Zoom. We start revisiting this idea. Long story short, we finish this idea. We do a demo for it. I sing the demo. He sends it off to guys that he told me he'd been writing with forever, right? So I'm like, not thinking anything of it. About 2 weeks later, I get a phone call. I'm out cutting my grass, literally weed eating, of course. So on brand, right? Cut my grass, and I get a phone call, and I answer it, and he's like, hey, man, this is Jason Aldean.
No way.
I got your phone number from my boy Tully, and he was like, you know, I just been hearing some stuff you've been writing, and he was like, I'd love to meet in person and just, you know, hang, whatever. Meanwhile, I'm like sprinting inside to find like a witness, right? I needed somebody to make sure this was not a prank call. To just show up at Jason Aldean's house. He was like, who the hell is this guy, you know? But no, it was legit. We ended up, he heard that song, that demo, and a couple other ones that we had ended up finishing with some of his bandmates, Kurt and Tully, Kurt Allison and Tully Kennedy. And so we had kind of started writing as a foursome like that, and I think we had like 2 or 3 together. So that's kind of how he heard about me. And yeah, funny story, going to meet him for the first time, right? I'm like, he was down in like Spring Hill. It was like an hour from me at the time. Again, had an older Ford that had no AC in it, and middle of August, and he's like, why don't you drive down to the house and we'll hang? I'd love to meet you. So I'm like, cool. So I'm driving down to Spring Hill. Every window rolled down, dude. Middle of August. You know how it is here, bro. It was, I'm sweating my ass off, like just soaking wet. My entire upper torso just soaking wet, right? And I pull up to this house, and I'm like pulling up to the White House, right? I'm like, get through the gate. I'm like, my truck's like backfiring and like blowing smoke out the back, you know. And I pull up through there. And he comes out to meet me. I didn't really have time to like think about it. He kind of came out. I was like, oh shit, you know. And I get out of my truck, and he dabs me up, dude. Just whole arm soaking wet from hugging me. And I was like, why does this happen? You couldn't have given me 5 minutes to find an old shirt in the back of my truck. You know, it was the most awkward encounter at first, because I was just so paranoid about my whole back being soaking wet. But he was so cool, man. He's been so cool to me ever since.
Connect the Uber driver from a year ago who is obviously connected and is still writing.
Yeah.
To how that got to the guys in Aldean's band.
So I skipped that part, I guess. So the Uber driver, whose name is John Edwards, he had been writing with Kurt and Tully for almost a decade. He had some cuts on Aldean like in the early 2000s, and I think they started writing then. He had a #1 with Blame It On You during that time. But yeah, he was just buddies with them. They just wrote a lot together. And so after he and I finished an idea, he sent them some other ideas that we had started, and they helped us finish.
Got it.
And that's kind of how they made the connection. But one other cool thing that was like the icing on the cake for me was, Edwards was kind of like, he was kind of like a little jaded and burnt, because he, just been through the ringer on a few different, ends of the music industry. But the coolest thing about all of it was, when Jason offered me a pub deal, he was like, I want to offer you a pub deal. Well, he also offered John Edwards a pub deal too.
Mm.
And so that was cool to have the guy who kind of found me initially, be able to get signed with me and sign a new pub deal and write songs together again. It was really cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
How that all came back around.
Yeah.
And it's also cool how you continue to be sweaty from driving unair conditioned. Because for those, and you probably don't know this because we didn't mention it, but John was in the bathroom changing his shirt whenever I walked in because he was sweaty in his truck with no air conditioner when he got here today. Yeah.
Yep.
So, hey, some things never change, man.
Some things never change. Hopefully one day I'll get a vehicle with AC.
Why don't you get a vehicle with an AC?
You know what? I'm cheap, man. I also got 3 kids to feed, so that's where most of my expenditures go.
I feel like maybe you don't buy an 11th guitar, but you do get an AC. Priorities, though, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm not a big spender.
AC's not big spending, though.
Yeah, you're right. In all reality, probably not. But it also takes time, man. Like, it takes time to go drop it off. I've been on the road so much, I haven't even been home. So
I hear you. I kind of don't hear you, but yeah.
Yeah.
How was Santa My Boots Fest?
It was awesome. Yeah, probably one of the coolest setups that I'd seen at a festival. Just as far as like even the back, backstage area, I was like, man, this is sick. Like, other than that, like the fans showed up early for us, which was kind of a first for us at a festival, a big festival like that. Coming off of like having a number one, that's when you're like, okay, I get it now. Because, whereas last summer, had we been booked at Santa My Boots, we would have been playing to a bunch of white chairs. You know what I mean? And we did do that for a long time in that 2 o'clock afternoon slot. But this year, man, like people showed up. It was really cool to see that and see the growth, on that side of things. But yeah, the festival in general was really fun. It was a lot of good people and a lot of good times.
Before you got here, we talked about the record, Carolina Blue. We talked about your touring. So I want to use these final 2 questions in the most efficient but meaningful way possible. So question 1 of 2. Right now, who are your favorite 4 artists?
Current artists?
No. You're right now.
Just of all time.
I come up to you. I'm like, dude, Mount Rushmore, your 4 favorite artists of all time. And some of them can be the same.
Yeah. Millsap's on there for sure. Probably, I would put Church in there somewhere. He's been a big influence on me. Just coming from the same area, and having that same kind of drive. Who else? That's tough, man. It's a tough question.
Not meant to be easy.
Keith Whitley's in there. Huge influence on me early on, coming from the bluegrass background, switching into country. That always intrigued me, and just, he was a stud. But Def Leppard's last. Yeah. I mean, not last, but that's my last pick, man. They've influenced me a lot. In the sonic world, I love that 80s guitar tones, the chords, like all that stuff. When I discovered that, I was like, wow, this is how a guitar should sound, and fell in love with it, and they've been one of my favorites ever since.
Final question. What did you not expect that's happening now about being a solo artist, a frontman, solo artist with success? Like, what's happening now that you didn't quite expect?
Probably just the time. I didn't realize how much time it required. Number one, to push a radio single. That was a big eye opener for me. I've had one as a songwriter, but being on the artist end of it, I now know what artists go through to promote that single or that album, whatever it may be. And, I have a lot more respect for it. And there's probably a little sweeter in that regard, having a number one as an artist yourself, because you're the one putting the work in, right? But yeah, I would say probably just, the time that you really have to. I've never been like, they'll laugh at me for saying this, but I've never been like a schedule-oriented guy where I'm like, have everything in my day planned out. I'm doing this from 9:30 to like that was just never me. And now I have to be that, right? You have to be, otherwise you pull time out of your personal life, and you lose time with people that you need to spend time with, or your kids, or whatever it may be. It's like you have to really get it down to a science to be able to delegate yourself in the best way and not spread yourself thin, because that's the other problem is try to do too much and you're not giving quality time to anybody. You're just there, So that was probably the biggest adjustment, at least for me in my life and the way it was to now, was probably that.
Well, man, I really appreciate the time. This has been awesome. Like I said, I didn't know you, so it's always cool whenever I don't know somebody and then I spend an hour with them, because this is a pretty intimate thing, because it's just you and me depending on each other. I mean, it's a dance.
Yeah.
But it's like, I like it when I like somebody after, because sometimes I don't.
Yeah.
So
I bet.
Well, yeah, because again, it's a vulnerable spot for both of us to sit here and just kind of look at each other and roll. It's like songwriting a bit too, where you just got to say stuff and hope the other person backs you up.
Yeah.
Or like provides. Mm-hmm. And so, I like you. Not that that matters to you, but
it does. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really.
I appreciate that. Same to
like
you.
Seem like a real guy. And so, yeah, I'm rooting for you. And congratulations, obviously, on the single, doing so well. But there's a difference, or at least at this point in my career, I can feel a bit of the difference between somebody who's got a hit single and somebody who is substantial and is going to have a whatever the version of success is for a long time. And I feel like you very much are that second part.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
So, yeah, this has been really fun for me. So I really appreciate you coming over.
Same, man.
And if you don't mind fixing that algae in the pool.
I got
on the way out.
I got you on the way out. I got some chemicals in my trailer.
Perfect.
Don't worry.
Perfect. All right, you guys follow John at John Morgan 95 on Instagram.